Hello class and welcome to the Module 9 lecture. In this lecture we're going to take a look at leadership and what we could expect in the future. Let's get started. Global leadership is a growing field. More people are studying it. It's becoming more and more relevant as the future moves forward, and there's only signs that the world is going to continue to grow more global, more interconnected, and more reliant upon each other. So there's a call for ongoing development and study. Much of the research on leadership has focused on expatriates or Americans who have moved or taken international assignments. The idea of the future study for global leadership, it needs to focus on the following things. How do other cultures interact with Western companies? How does the size of a company affect its global leadership? And how do leaders from other countries lead? And how they specifically may differ from the way that things are done in America. Indeed, key areas for leadership for academics to focus on would be the future success factors for global business roles, the impact of emerging business markets, such as India, Brazil, the role of new technologies and innovation on global leadership, future global leadership training and development, the interaction between cultural levels. Now, this is an interesting one because you can look at the culture of a nation, a company, a group, or even an individual, and how do each of those different levels interact with people or levels from other countries. And the increasing usage of collaboration, how companies are actually taking totally different structures or forms or partnerships in order to tackle global issues. Very little research today is focused on activities that lead to successful performance as a leader. Future leadership needs to focus on factors that determine success in the global leadership roles. So things like cultural IQ. So we all know what our general IQ is, but cultural IQ refers to a person's intelligence quotient as it relates to their culture and the other cultures around the world. Exposure and previous leadership experience, whether it's just leadership within a host country or with leadership globally. Research should focus more on research should focus on more than just the American experience. You'll find that because of America's dominance in the global economy, that much of the research, much of the work is all done from a Western perspective. Even many of the things presented in this class have been based on a Western sense of business perspective and how other countries may need to interact with that, or our perceptions about other countries, but very little about their perception about America, or just the perspective that's not American. Research shows that some university accepted leadership practices, but how those lessons change as increasing numbers of non-Western companies expand internationally. This is interesting because as the world becomes more global, America is already a dominant force out there globally when it comes to business. But as we continue to evolve over the next 25, 50, 100 years, you're going to see a greater participation from other countries. India, China, Brazil, and other countries are going to take more of the stage. So America's presence will ideally be, or predictably be, shrunk, while the influence of other cultures expand. What does this mean for international business? What does this mean for international practices? How will American companies respond to this change? Cultural distance, power distance, paternalism, all of those topics, plus many more, differ from how Western countries, when I say Western countries, I'm meaning the United States. You could also add Australia in there, and Great Britain, Canada, countries with similar cultural identities. When you look at these other places like India, Brazil, China, you'll see that they differ on these cultural dimensions. And it's going to be interesting to see how they play out and how they integrate. As emergent nations have companies that grow into the next generation of multinational corporations, how will leadership change? Will the practices of these emergent nations replace existing business practices? Will the two sets of competing practices integrate somehow to form a third new perspective or a third new practice? Only time will tell. As younger generations take global leadership roles, they bring with them a greater understanding of technology. So we would predict that technology usage will continue to increase because the younger generations are more familiar with it. Also, as countries smaller now in terms of their global impact in business, as they increase, you'll see that they will actually leapfrog various technologies. They don't have the issue of legacy technologies to overcome. So as a new technology emerges that's relevant, there's not a competitor in that particular country. So it's easier for them to embrace that new technology. Whereas in some places like the United States, Canada, um, there's already solutions in place. And when a new technology comes into place, it's competing with those older technologies. Because people have money invested in those older technologies, they tend to stay around longer, when new technologies come out. So it's going to be interesting. Technological innovations around robotics and automation remain a concern for the elimination of jobs, resulting in a workforce that needs to be more educated and less reliant on manual labor.
Nice to meet you. This is a humanoid robot, which means it looks, it talks, and it even acts, well, like a human. So does that mean it could take a human job like mine?
You better believe it.
There's no denying robots and increasingly part of our daily lives. Just look around the grocery store or the highway, or in the case of Dr Vesey here, even at the theater.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
The rise of robots has led to some pretty scary warnings about the future of work.
Robots will be able to do everything better than us.
A recent study found up to 670,000 U.S. jobs were lost to robots between 1990 and 2007, and that number is likely to go up. A widely cited study from 2013 found nearly half of all jobs in the U.S. are in danger of being automated over the next 20 years. Occupations that require repetitive and predictable tasks in transportation, logistics, and administrative support were especially high risk. And just think, robots don't need health benefits, vacation, or even sleep for that matter. But the debate over whether robots will take over all of our jobs is by no means settled. Many economists argue automation will ultimately create new jobs. After all, someone has to program the robots, right? Let's go back to the 1850s, when trains were the most popular mode of transportation. This chart shows the number of locomotive engineers, railroad conductors, and brakemen increasing by nearly 600%. But that growth slowed in the early 1900s. Why? You guessed it, the automobile came along. Car mechanic and repairman jobs surged, even though railroad jobs began to disappear. And some companies say the same thing will happen when robots move into the marketplace. A survey of 20,000 employers from 42 countries found that the IT, customer service, and advanced manufacturing industries will add workers over the next 2 years as a result of automation. It's hard to imagine that robots can replicate human characteristics like empathy or compassion that are required in many jobs. I mean, would you really want a robot as your nurse, babysitter, or teacher? But even if robots don't take our jobs entirely, research shows they will significantly change day-to-day tasks in the workplace. This is particularly a problem for lower-skilled workers who aren't able to retrain for new jobs. They might get stuck with lower wages in a world with more robots, and that could make income inequality even worse. These guys are making a lot of things uncertain right now, but one thing that's clear is skills training is required if we hope to get on with friends like them in the workplace.
I think we're going to get along just fine.
Approximately 1/3 of American companies offer cross-cultural training for expatriates, and nearly half of those training programs are reported to be useful. So there's a long way for American companies to go when it comes to recognizing the importance of intercultural training and providing it to employees who are taking jobs overseas. In fact, Olin and Bird, their 2008 they proposed 3 models for global leadership development. The Chattanooga model, which encourages a series of high-level international challenges. The Global Leadership Expertise Development model, which focuses on finding one person with the right attributes for international work, so you have to do less training. And then the McCall and Holmbrecht experience, which focuses on key topics and themes necessary for global leadership. Training is designed around those particular themes. With the increase in globalization, we need to understand how companies will interact with each other, how cultures will interact with each other. And we just don't know. The one thing that we do know is that change will happen, but we don't know exactly how that change will manifest. Will global leaders identify more with their national culture or with their individual personal moral beliefs? How does international culture influence companies or groups? These are areas of research that need to be conducted that are currently wide open. Presently, research shows that the more people work internationally, the greater their association with what we call a global identity. And this is their tendency to recognize themselves not as a member of one nation per se, but as a member of the world, or a member of Earth, or a member of the human species, as opposed to focusing particularly on one particular nation. But much remains unseen in terms of how leadership will continue to evolve as global leadership changes. Organizations have a history of growing and adapting their structure and design to fit environmental changes. What we've seen in terms of the evolution of global business bears this to be true. There's been a lot of changes. Organizations have adjusted their structure in many ways to compensate for the challenges of international business. And we expect that organizations will continue to grow and adopt, and that we'll see new business models continue to emerge in terms of organizational structure and also how organizations work, partner, and compete with each other. Presently, researchers are studying mergers and acquisitions as a means of understanding global expansion. Think of it this way: a traditional merger and acquisition of a company and how they bridge the two cultures together between those two organizations could serve as a model for how this will be done on a larger scale when it comes to international business. That wraps it up for this lecture. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to send me an email. Thank you and have a good day.